Rachel Henderson,
Here.
Dale Duffy,
Here.
Amber Kirsting,
Here.
Emily Hines,
Here.
Michelle Dupree,
Here.
Angela Wolf.
Here. Great, we have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our mission statement, the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed changes to the agenda order tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to community communications. We have one speaker tonight, Josie Bowman.
My name is Josie Pillman and I live in Knapp, which is part of the Menomonie School District. Dr. Zadowski and members of the board, June is Dairy Month. The phrase separation of church and state has been misunderstood over the years. It is not in the Constitution or in any of the founding documents. It was quoted in a letter by Jefferson and was never intended to keep the church out of public affairs. Rather, it was intended to keep the government out of the church. Why? Because we have freedom of religion and freedom of speech in the public square. In the Menomonie SBMA, parents are being told through curriculum and teachers and librarians what they say is true about human gender. The children are being taught that right is wrong and wrong is right. Thus, the whole community is losing its trust in the educational system. We are being told that professionals know better than the parents how to teach about human sexuality. Children are being taught that they can change their identity based on what they feel about themselves. Lie. In truth, they must learn to accept who they are. Only then can they move forward with mental and physical health. Hidden from the LGBTQ agenda is the truth that all sexual diseases can be avoided if the LGBTQ lifestyle is avoided. Remember gonorrhea and syphilis and AIDS and the more recent monkeypox? Are children in the classroom taught the truth about these consequences for moral failure? The medical risks, that they should flee immorality? Sexual sin also results in guilt, shame, and emotional and mental illness. Remember Chloe who came and talked to us. Our young people and our teachers need to be taught how to express dissent in a safe, healthy, kind, and respectful way. This is true love. Truth be told, none of the sexual sins represented in the LGBTQ ideology are true, good, or wholesome. We must teach our children not to base their sexuality on feelings. Instead, they must understand the truth about human sexuality and receive the knowledge that the only natural and moral and correct way to understand reproduction is that all humankind was created with a biological sex, male or female. Also that sexual union was designed for procreation. There are moral standards to keep the individual and community safe and flourishing. Procreation is a beautiful thing, intended within the boundaries of a committed husband and wife relationship for life. School board, this is the truth we must teach our children. June is Dairy Month and we are proud of it. How does this work? When a farmer wants to produce milk and all things dairy, he needs to be very scientific and have understanding about how nature works. He takes a heifer or a mature cow, breeds her, and she produces a calf. She also produces milk and all things dairy. This milk is everything a new calf needs to grow and thrive, but the farmer knows it is also useful for humankind. He can even make a business of it. If he follows the laws of nature and nature's God, he can be quite successful. His product will be useful to his community. June is Dairy Month. We are so proud of our farmers. I'm thankful we have schools that teach science, schools that can teach our children how nature works so that we can have a wholesome, thriving community. We can celebrate June as Dairy Month and be proud of it. So, thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the personnel consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda.
Hines moves.
Second.
Motion by Emily, second by Dominique. Any discussion or questions? We have a couple of resignations and one new hire. If there's no questions or discussion, we can vote on that. And motion passes unanimously. And next, we have our discussion agenda. First up, we have our report on summer maintenance, and I think that we have our maintenance director here to share with us.
All right, so I brought our summer to-do list along tonight. Starting out with the section labeled projects. These are projects that we talked about last in January. I think all but one of them are included in the district's 30-year plan. So just a quick update on those. Starting out at the high school this summer, we're going to work on replacing all the LED fixtures in the main gym, as well as the upper gym mezzanine area. Over at the middle school for an HVAC project, we're going to be replacing a heating line going from an upper mezzanine over to the middle school's main gym. Steve, our energy manager, is finishing that project planning portion up, and we'll be ready to start that shortly. A door replacement project this summer at River Heights, we're going to be putting in 6 new exterior doors, frames, hardware, etc. for the exits to the gym and the cafeteria areas. For flooring projects this summer, we're going to be doing gym work. 3 gyms this summer, high school, River Heights, and Wakanda, are all going to be refinished. Back at the middle school, we're going to be doing a little bit of work to the bleachers. We have some boards to replace over there. For a building envelope type project at the high school, we're going to be recaulking the joints between the precast panels around the pool area. So that's part of the overall pool project that the contractors haven't gotten to as of yet, but we'll be doing it a little bit later this summer. For parking lot work, we're going to be doing cracks, painting lines, doing patches at the middle school and the high school. So at the middle school, it'll be the entire paved surfaces of the grounds, and at the high school, we'll be doing the south and the east, so the field house and the main parking lot this year. So those are the larger projects that we have planned for this year. As far as our maintenance staff go, I guess the biggest thing that they probably do in the summertime is all stuff. Lots of furniture, whoever needs what at a school transferred to another school to storage, that kind of thing. So we do a lot of that, and then your typical light fixture replacements, some parking lot works, filling potholes. A little bit of work planned out at the environmental site, and our typical athletic field maintenance, maintaining our lines through the summer months and sweeping the new synthetic turf field. Onto our custodial staff, they've got a big job ahead of them. So typically what we do is 2, 3, 4 of them team up, go into a room, empty it out, clean all the furniture, refinish the floors, extract carpets, clean all the surfaces, just really get the rooms a good deep cleaning. So we already have a nice start on that. That first week after school got out was kind of the goal week for us, especially at the high school in River Heights with the summer programming. So we got a good start at those locations. We got a couple more blocks this summer coming up where we can make some progress. So those are the typical things that custodians do, along with like HVAC filter changes and just some light maintenance. We have a little bit of training for our staff planned for later this summer. So our CISA 10 health and safety consultant will be over to do a refresher course for us. Things such as lockout, takeout, asbestos awareness, fall prevention, just a good overall safety few-hour training session. I'll be getting our maintenance staff over to the high school to become familiar with the new filtration system. That system is up and running now. Myself, I'll be going through asbestos training. It's an annual O&M training that I do. And then I'm going to be looking to send one more staff to pool training, so CPO training, certified pool operator. Right now we have one, and that's just like a backup in case that person needs to miss work for any reason. As far as seasonal staffing goes, our grounds crew is now full, so we have 3 staff out mowing all 7 locations, the district office, the environmental site. It's kind of a unique summer. We're getting plenty of rain and temperatures, so the grass is growing quickly. But we're making some headway on it. I think we'll be pretty well caught up in another week or so if it stops raining. As of right now, I don't have any painters hired. I did just learn that we have one interested person that I'll be pursuing over the next few days. A little bit on my end, even though it's summer, I'll be looking at projects that we'll be talking about in January. So I kind of take the summer months as my chance to get into the school, see, without being disruptive to the teachers and the students, looking at whatever needs to be looked at. So I'll look at the 30-year plan, what's coming in the next 3 years, and come up with my recommendations for what we should do next. Some of those things are going to be LED projects, so with the results in from our latest bids for LEDs, it's pretty apparent that we need to raise our prices a little bit if we're going to pursue those projects. And then through the course of working on the pool, we found a couple other things that will need attention over the coming years. So those types of things, along with tracks, tennis courts, paved areas, flooring, we'll be working on getting all that information gathered. So that is our to-do list for the summer. Any questions?
I have a question. My question is, since you're doing some repair on the middle school bleachers, is there any talk of, I haven't been there in a long time, but when I was there at one time, it looked like it was pretty dangerous, there were no railings or anything. Is there any talk of putting some railings in or something to make sure it's a little safer, especially for some of our elderly population?
I can certainly explore that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can also say that when Mr. Betcher has had events over there, like the Veterans Day program or the 8th grade ceremony at the end of the school year, they've been using a lot of on-floor seating as well to try to make sure that there's opportunities for everyone.
I have a question. How do you determine the projects that are going to be a focus for the 2025? Like, do you get feedback from people, or just curious how you identify those specific projects?
Yeah, my observations, building principals, my staff that are there every day, just kind of take a look and prioritize, what we need or versus what we want, what needs to be done this year versus waiting 2 years. Trying to get the most out of our money for our projects and not replace things until it's necessary. But yes, feedback from the people that work there is a big part of it.
And is this a playground discussion? Or do we do this here? Is that part of building and grounds, or is that a separate topic?
Most of the time, playgrounds, after the initial build, has been something that has been expanded upon by the various PTO groups at the buildings. We do know that we have some playground maintenance, and there's been annual maintenance performed, but in terms of a large playground project, we do not currently have those included in our 30-year plan. Now, that is something that if the board chose to do that, it could be legally included in the 30-year capital maintenance plan, and that plan will be brought to the board in January.
I have a question, one more question. I'm not sure if this is part of what falls under your umbrella, but I'm curious to know if anything has changed in the line of cameras on the playground.
So I think cameras would be between myself and the tech department. I'm not aware of any expansions in the playgrounds off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question well enough, or do you know what more or less where they are, or is that kind of what you're asking, or?
That is what I was questioning. I know that in the past that we've had some issues on playgrounds and haven't been able to capture anything, or didn't have enough cameras to capture what we wish we could have. So I guess that's where my question was aiming at. Have there been changes since then? Because I didn't know if there were.
I would probably answer that similar to how I answered Emily's question, that we have our current footprint in the 30-year capital improvement plan. Now, if that's something that we want to expand and have a certain standard of coverage on all district grounds or all district playgrounds, we could do that. It would be very expensive, I can tell you that. But there are advantages to having more surveillance coverage. But right now, our plan simply is to replace the current footprint, and I know that's something Katie's been working on this summer, even costing out those projects.
I'm curious as you start the process of like coming up with recommendations for the next school year in light of the current budget deficit, if you will be, you talked about prioritizing, but sort of thinking about like, this is an absolute must do, here's some bonus things, or if we, what we'll look at is a list that kind of takes into consideration the doubts that we might have about that.
Yes, I will have photos. I already have photos, like for the pool, for example. So those will be shared. Yes, I can certainly take more photos and
Oh, yeah, I'm not worried about it. We're just making sure we have a sense of like, what are the really, like, we can't put this off any longer versus.
And I think it's important to bring up too that when we talk about the capital maintenance fund, it's dollars that are already there. It's not dollars coming out of operations. However, with the cuts that were made and the fact that the preliminary budget for next year does not include any additional contributions, I do think being even more scrupulous with any Fund 46 projects will be something the board can expect. So that's why when we talk about adding more, whether it be cameras or playgrounds or whatever, we don't have the plan funded as is with our current footprint. So anything we add to it at this point would just put it further in the red.
Regarding those changes out, like when we get to the point in January of reviewing the 30-year capital maintenance plan, like in advance of that meeting, would be a good time to ask for, like, what is the current state? How many cameras are there? Where are they? So we would know that if we want to make any changes in the future, or say with, like, playground improvements or costing that out, right? Like we could be prepared to have more information on that when we have that meeting. That makes sense.
So having folks that are sharing concerns have that ready in January? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I think that's the right time to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would not wait till the January meeting though. I mean, this is helpful even now, bringing it up, and as things come forward, if you let us know, we can do more research on it and try to develop plans and options for the board to consider.
I'm really looking forward to new lines in the Fieldhouse parking lot. I think that's going to be very nice. I'm sure other people feel the same way. Any other questions for Kevin? Thank you so much for being here and for all your work this summer and all year. Next up, we have presentation of the CTE program review. And we'll hand this over to Brian and/or Brian, who's taking it this year.
All right, well, thank you. So we're starting out with the Career and Technical Education Program Review. This is the instructional area that we conduct the program review for newer board members and a refresher. Each year we will conduct a program review for one, or in some cases, 2 areas. We chose to tackle career and technical education by itself in its own year because, if you recall from when we rolled this out in the fall, career and technical education encompasses 6 different areas. So business and marketing education, agriculture education, technology and engineering, family consumer science, and agricultural and natural resources. So while career and technical education is one umbrella, it has 6 different components to that. Ryan Stieri, our career and technical education coordinator, is here. So I'm going to turn things over for him to hit the highlights on what the department came up with.
Sure. Well, thanks, Brian. And the way we came about this documentation, and I put it all on this handout that I think everybody has access to, that Brian said they did, is first of all, we met, Brian explained the process, and then from that point, I met with all of the departments. And we started off with a working document where essentially we kept the document very close to our desk or somewhere handy where, as we had ideas that came to mind, we were able to record those. And from that point, we came back together again, and then I took essentially all the information from each of the individual departments, whether it be family, consumer science, agri-science, business and marketing, as well as technology and engineering. And took all of that information, and then I summarized it in what you see as this document. So this is the summarization of all of those departments within career and technical education. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight are, first of all, and I referred to when we did this documentation, so I thought a little bit about what's called the three-legged stool from DPI. And that's what they kind of look at when they look at what a comprehensive CTE program is. And one would be strong curriculum, two would be student organizations, three would be a work-based learning program. So then I kind of looked at that stool, and then I looked at this evaluation and kind of put all of that together. So first of all, I feel, and our department members feel, that we do have comprehensive course offerings. Like Brian said, we do encompass all of the departments. We have course offerings starting in the middle school that students then can take throughout the high school, starting from very exploratory programs to becoming capstone type course offerings. Many of these courses are articulated into dual credit options where students can earn college credit while they're still in high school. The majority of them are through CBTC, some UW Stout, and we are looking at as well. In some cases, like of course that CBTC doesn't offer, we could pursue that course to be articulated with, let's say, WITC or another technical college, of course, following the chain of command and starting with CBTC. Within these articulation agreements, when we do have 31 courses that we did offer in the 23-24 school year, we offer academies within these articulated courses. So now students can earn certificates, and in some cases earn associate's degrees. In total, we do have 4 academies. We have our electrical maintenance academy, our pre-nursing academy, our business management academy, and then our CNA, which is just a single course, would be kind of considered an academy as well. So many of those things are organized in academies, so students can, really, I think, streamline their course selections. And then within all of these classes, they're very much project-based. There's hands-on learning. Kids are learning while doing, which I think is very, very important. And I think classroom management, 90% of that, I think I heard that from John Niederhauser at one time, a former teacher. It is a curriculum, and if kids are having a good time in the class and they're learning, they feel it's relevant, that's the majority of our classroom management. So we do have the majority of our classes are project-based. Other highlights of the program would be to our student organizations, where we do offer, like Brian said, of all of our CTE areas, we have student organizations within all of those areas. That would be the second part of the three-legged stool, so students can compete if they're interested in, let's say, going into finance, or a student that's interested in agronomy can go compete in a competition. They participate in leadership events, fundraising events, and getting together with students that are interested in a lot like them. The third item is we do have a state-recognized, long-standing, I feel, robust work-based learning program where anywhere from 70 to 80 students participate in that every year. Many of them are earning industry certifications. I do have that listed in our Education for Employment report. Some of those are DPI recognized, and some of them are youth apprenticeships, which are GWD recognized. Others are other types of certifications, maybe an OSHA 10 type safety certification or a Microsoft certification. But these are very much resume builders that we hope give students a leg up when they go to apply for another job. And any of these, I'll call, we can double dip on these certifications. They're not only great for students who are bringing in a lot of dollars to the district. For instance, a DPI skills certification, every year we apply for a CT incentive grant. This year that's going to be worth $700, so students that earn that $700 for the school. Youth apprenticeships, we can even double dip again because we're part of the DWD grant, and we get grant dollars through DWD plus the CT incentive grant. So it's very, very impactful for our departments and our administration. I can't thank enough has let the CTE department use those dollars, so they've gone right back to us, and they've helped build their program so we can offer more certifications. So those are very important as well. And the last area too is just our business and industry community partners. We've been very fortunate to have strong community partners in the form of, let's say, work-based learning employers. Many of these folks participate in our advisory committee meetings. They help give us direction to our courses, our curriculum. They provide places where we can take students to visit. They allow us to, participate in job shadows. They come into our classes. They talk in our classes, and they also participate in our education for employment events, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So with I think these good things that we have going, there are opportunities, and there's always need for growth. For instance, looking at our articulated courses, we need to continue to expand those transcripted credit offerings, and in many cases explore, let's say a course like, I'm going to say Advanced Woods. Okay, CBTC does not offer a cabinetry program. WITC does, so we've actually talked with CBTC, and they said yes. Explore this with WITC. So in that case, credits, through WITC, maybe they wouldn't be, otherwise there would be a, let's say another university. Continue to explore those. As far as the work-based learning programs, continue to expand job placements, especially for students maybe in areas where it's hard.
And see if that's any better.
Sure.
Is that on?
Yeah.
Running their mics on right now? Strange.
I can just talk loud too. So that's okay.
That's very resonating.
Yeah, I teach in the wood shop, so that's no problem there. So we want to expand our work-based learning opportunities. For instance, in some cases, like for students, it might be hard to get them experience in engineering or architecture areas, or working as a dental hygienist, maybe in accounting and finance, any business. So we want to expand those, meet with employers, so that way, hopefully we can help students find placements in those areas and continue to grow our youth apprenticeship program as well, and continue to grow our programs that are bringing dollars back to the departments. As far as our CTSO offerings, some of the things we want to do is identify and maintain consistent funding sources through grant writing, through fundraising, working with Matt Riley to identify areas that we can do that. Our business and industry community partnerships, continue to grow those as well. Continue to structure our advisory committees, because they're so important. I career and technical education, because they give us direction to our program. They help us to stay current with what's going on in industry, what's going on in business, and that's very, I think, just essential for all of us to get into different businesses so we know what's going on, whether it's a Walmart distribution, whether it's a Big Dot Happiness, I can go on, so we know what those employer needs are, and continue to invite those folks to our advisory committees and establish timelines for those. Project-based learning, a big part of that's maintaining our labs. So once again, identifying those consistent funding sources, and oftentimes it is through grant writing and being creative with the CT incentive grant. Maybe it's other types of sources, working with our industry partners too, to develop plans, and so that way we can get them into our classes and say, hey, we could maybe use a little help here, maybe that extra sheet metal that you have over there would work great for these projects to be as fiscally responsible as possible. So those are big things, and also just to, working with our, as far as offering comprehensive courses, continuing to look at our course offerings to make sure they're aligned with our new CTE standards that are coming out, our advisory committee recommendations, and also what our labs are, what we can do in our labs and cannot do in our labs, those types of things. So that's a big part, I guess, of the program review summary. Any questions?
Thanks, that was very thorough and quite interesting. Something I'm kind of wondering from the board perspective, I think you laid out a lot of things where there's opportunities to grow into, and, you know, ways of kind of looking at maybe programs you already offer, and I guess I'm curious if there's cases where areas you would like to grow into, you know, there's this grid of identify, meet with additional employers to find, you know, difficult to find areas, dentists, accountants, et cetera. Are there situations where, either because of facilities or staffing limitations, you don't feel you're able to get into the things you really like to do? Like, oh, we'd love to have a program in this, but we don't have the space, we don't have a person, you know, just like what are the limitations that we're facing that couldn't, you know?
Right, well, I guess with a lot of that, it all depends, like, Avery, are you talking more about the work-based learning program, like how we would identify, let's say, placements for our students, or looking more at our labs and what our advisory committee says?
However you want to interpret the question, I'm just like,
Sure.
you know, I'm always curious about, you know, we're doing a great job.
Yep.
What could we, you know, if we could move a piece here or there,
Sure.
to make it even better, right? That's really the question.
So a lot of times we like to do in this case, and we'll continue to do that when the new standards come out, a curriculum review. And then also, you know, based on, once again, our advisory committees, and I know I'm saying that work quite a bit. Well, let's say we have an advisory committee that comes back to us and says, hey, we would like you to do more in the building construction area. And of course, I teach tech ed, so I can come up with a pretty quick example there. We might integrate that into an existing class, and integrate that into existing curriculum for that. And an example, perfect example of that, we met with Mark Lewis. He said, is it possible for you guys to do some of these things? I can't remember the exact conversation. So we started building model garages. We got donated lumber through Walmart distribution, the contact there. Kevin helped us get the material, started building model garages. We've incorporated some electrical units into some of our other classes, our senior internship classes, our energy tech classes. So that would be an example of that. Usually there's a way we can teach the curriculum to some degree, and there might be limitations, and that's where we, you know, work with Casey, you know, work with Brian, and kind of determine, hey, what are some things we can do? Sometimes it's grant writing too. For instance, you know, we've got some new equipment into our labs, so it might be we might not be able to do that tomorrow or next year, but it could be if we can get this equipment in, now we can start teaching those units. So that would be how we would identify that. And sometimes we like that, not sometimes, but we want to look at our standards too, and look at overlap and underlap. We might not be able to teach every standard, but if we're just hitting 2 or 3 standards, we probably need to look at our course offerings and what we're doing to identify more of them. And some of them, let's say like safety or measurement, those are very important. That's fine if we're hitting them a lot of times, but maybe in other areas, spread that out a little bit more. So that's how we handle those things. We try to work closely as a department too. We have a very strong CT department, good folks in there, so that we keep the lines of communication open. So when there are things that need to be identified, hopefully, you know, we get those things done.
Thanks.
You know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Ryan, in everything that you were just mentioning, the just light bulbs were flashing, and I'm thinking about a couple of your examples and how easily math, literacy, science, all these things could be connected.
Yep.
and really spotlighted with and for kids. You know, they're always asking, how is this going to matter to me, or am I going to use this? Or, so, when educators are teaching all of these courses, are they really working to help students find those connections?
Absolutely, and that was one of Casey's goals for all of our departments were to incorporate math and reading and science, and to take a look at areas where we need to, you know, continue to incorporate all of, I'll call it the core subjects, whatever it might be, and make them relevant to the students. So that's one of the things that when we sit down and Casey evaluates us, we bring that documentation and say, Casey, this is what we're doing. And I believe I met some folks last year to kind of talk about how we can bring in, let's say, a tech ed, all the different areas of math, very, very important in tech ed, whether it's be the understanding the Cartesian coordinates when you're running a CNC milling machine, whether it's technical reading and writing, print reading, all of those types of things. Maybe it's electricity, maybe it's all the science, whether it's Ohm's law behind all of our, electrical type units, and trying to have the kids do more and more technical reading and writing too is very important. Presentations, that's something we've tried to really highlight as well. And for instance, in, let's say, I'm using tech ed examples, of course, but in an advanced woods class, I'll have kids present on their project almost like a contractor would sit down with a customer. Or, so many of the communication is almost informal with the customer. And I used to work construction, during the summers. You get done building a project and the homeowner comes home, okay, how are we going to communicate what we're doing? What went well? What are some things, hey, maybe we got to adjust or whatever. Those types of things. So yes, we want to make that as relevant as possible, make the kids as well-rounded so when they get out there. And I think this does very much so bring relevance to our math classes, our science classes, our reading classes, world language classes, all of those types of courses, very much so. Yep.
I just had a question. With your advisory boards, has anybody brought up the CISA 10 initiative, the CTE 10 Grow Your Own kind of, have you heard of that program?
Like grow your own teachers?
Yeah, grow your own teachers,
yeah.
Regionally, yeah.
That would probably be a question a little bit more for Sam, how that would be handled. But, I've heard about those programs where you can hire based on industry experience. I'm not as familiar with that, but I have heard about those programs, yeah.
Yeah, and this is more for undergrad students, and then they would have to be employed for 3 years within the district, but I think Menomonie would invest in those folks, and then they'd have to stay here. I just didn't know if that was brought up at all with CISA 10, because we're part of that consortium, correct? CISA 10? Over 11, okay.
Yeah, but I know what you're talking about, Emily, and we
Okay.
looked at that really closely this spring. There's advantages and disadvantages to that program. Right now, the cost advantage for us to be part of that probably isn't what we decided was in our best interest at this point. We've been having pretty good success with terrific CTE teachers, but that's something we continue to monitor.
All right, if there's no other questions, thank you so much. This was a really great presentation. And I think we get the same cast of characters for our next agenda item. We have a review of the Education for Employment Plan.
All right, so Ed for Employment, the Ed for Employment Plan, this is an annual update to the board. In the background in board docs and the public comment, we identified some bulleted items that really highlight where the updates to this year's plan over last year's plan are included. A couple of things just to point out as we go through a little further in the plan. This last year, we spent a fair amount of time reviewing our academic and career planning activities at the middle school level. Included a couple of infographics to help better articulate what those experiences at the middle school look like. And that's included. And then within the plan itself, we spent a lot of time updating a lot of the facts and the figures. So, really, a lot of this comes from the Dunn County workforce profile. So Ryan, if there are any highlights for you, otherwise we can ask for questions.
No. Essentially, the Education for Employment Plan is a lot of our academic career plan, which would be many, oftentimes assigned activities to students, and some of them self-selected as well to teach them about, and hopefully inform them about what they want to do after they graduate so they can streamline their course selection, talking about making courses relevant, and also when they get into post-secondary experience, hopefully they have a clear path and they understand their interests. So that's essentially what that Education for Employment Plan is.
Questions on the Education for Employment or E4E plan?
I just noticed in a lot of the graphs, some of the data is lagging a couple of years behind, like some of them ends in 2021. I'm curious, is that typical of the Dunn County data? in your experience? I feel like I would have seen at least 2023 at this point, but maybe not.
So Abe, to your question, the short answer is yes. The most recent workforce profile that is compiled out of Wisconsin Economic Development Department of Workforce Development, sorry, I'll get the right one there for you, is the 2023 workforce profile, so that's through December. We will see periodically some in-year updates and things like that, but for the purpose of this plan, we go to the most recent full profile, and then some of that data then, and trend data will lag a little bit further behind. We did have the opportunity to update with a little longer range forecast. As far as West Central Wisconsin industry employment projections, I think previous, that projection went out to 2026. They've now released that forecast up to 2030. So we can kind of take a look and see where the industries, not only in Dunn County, but also in West Central Wisconsin, are projected to go. The other thing that has that was been shared with us that has caused some of the information to lag is as the state and the nation went through recovery from COVID and those types of things, some of the projections, they've been hesitant to put out trends because they don't know how much of it is an actual trend and how much of it is, what ultimately will be considered a blip.
Yeah, we absolutely see it in the unemployment rate, right? It's hard to, you see a trend except for 2 years. Okay, thanks. Yeah, one thing I note is that, we always see changes in different industries. And again, my background being in kind of artificial intelligence and so on, like there's going to be lots of shifts of things that traditionally were very high value industries that are actually quickly being undercut for better or worse. And so I think I would anticipate we're going to see lots of change in these tables of employment pretty quickly over the next couple of years in a way that may be pretty dramatic. So I was kind of looking to see if there's any hints of that yet.
Any other questions for Ryan or Mr. Sterry? Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
The Ed for Employment Plan will come back at our next meeting for your approval.
Thank you. Alright. Next on the agenda, we have the Human Resources Report. We have the microphone. Okay, you're right.
Okay, so you do have two attachments in here. They're essentially the same information, but I know that it's more interesting if I include some graphs, and Abe really likes graphs and pie charts and things, so try to pretty it up a little bit. But we'll just walk through kind of a couple highlights with the Human Resources Report. Sometimes HR can be a little hard to make exciting, so we'll do the best that we can. But you can see that our staff stays pretty stable. We have 3 more staff members this year than we did last year. And about half of them have worked for our school district for 5 years or less. So we have a very young staff. And then about 30% have worked for 10 years or more within the district. There's a breakdown of where each of our employees falls, and then also that chart there within where they fall within each of the years of experience within the district. So, any questions about that before I move on to exiting staff? So I think one of the biggest questions that I get from, I think from the board and from a lot of people is, why are people leaving and what does that look like? And so we do have the 5-year kind of roll here so that you can see what those numbers look like. One of the things that I can say, stands out to me is going to be those paras that have resigned throughout the year. That's a very high number. It's the highest number we've had in 5 years. Various reasons for that. I do talk with the paras, and we do have the exit survey, and I'm going to address that as well.
because I feel like we don't have a very high percentage of people that take our exit survey. And so that's something that moving forward, I'm gonna need to take a look at, because I really do want the feedback from people about why they're leaving. One thing that I will say is that being a para is a very, very difficult job, and we have had paras that literally have worked for us for 4 days and stopped here and turned in their stuff and said, I can't do this. Or have stopped at the front office and dropped their keys and badge and said, I can't do this, this isn't for me. It's a very hard job, and we recognize that. And we try to make sure, working with Tonya and the special ed department, making sure that we have enough staff members and enough paras to adequately support our students. And so, I think that that's part of it. I think the other part is that the job market is pretty good right now. There are other positions that are available within the community. And so, people will end up finding something different. Again, we really do try to retain our paras and any of our staff members, but specifically our paras, because we know how hard it is to find paras and to keep them and to make sure that that consistency is there for our special education students. So moving on, again, I always like to kind of specifically highlight the teachers and where the teachers are going. And there is a people graph in here, I guess, that kind of shows the 3 main reasons that I categorize people leaving this year were for accepting a position in a different district. We had 3 people that did that, accepting a position outside of public education. Some may have moved into like a CISA or a university setting, but I categorize them as kind of leaving public education. K-12, I guess, maybe is where I should have honed in a little bit better there. And then we always have people who leave for personal or health reasons. So family reasons would be another 4 that have left. With regard to the exit survey, that is sent to every one of our staff members, and I do review that data very regularly, just so that I can see if there are any trends. To break it down, we had 12 out of all of the people that left this year that completed our exit survey. And so that was disappointing, especially I see a pretty high number from our retirees, and this year our retirees didn't take the time to give feedback. So again, I'm gonna have to take a look at that, see if there's an incentive, or try to find out, is it too long? Are people not interested? I'm not quite sure. So I need to look into that a little bit more, because I do value that data very much. Our scores ranked anywhere from the lowest being a 2.8, and that was our benefits, to our highest being 4.27, and that's treating employees fairly, and that your supervisor treated you fairly. So that is encouraging to me, that people feel that when they do work here, that they're treated fairly, and that their supervisors are working with them. Any questions about the exit surveys or exiting staff, or we can wait until the end too, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Do you have a sense of, on the people graph, how that might compare to other districts at all, even just like a gut instinct?
Gut instinct would say it's probably pretty similar. I don't know of a lot of other reasons that people are leaving education, so I would say that would be pretty standard. And again, I talk with each of these individuals and know pretty clearly the reasons that they are leaving.
I would maybe add that in Menomonie, I think the number of teachers that leave to go to a different K-12 setting is less percentage-wise than other school districts. But I also think that with some of the opportunities we have here, people leaving for other opportunities outside of K-12 education might be a little higher.
I have a question. You had mentioned trying to retain paras. What are some of the things that we do to try to retain paras, since it is such a difficult position with relatively lower pay?
Good question. So that's one of the things that I've worked on with my assistant, is kind of the onboarding process and making sure that they have the paperwork that they need, and that they have everything that they need, that we're setting up a time for them to come in and get their technology in place. And so we also connect them with someone at their building so that that person can kind of be like a pseudo mentor to them, help them with logging in. I know that in the business department, they send an email so that it has quite a bit of information, but it shows them, tells them how to log in, how to log out, or clock in, clock out, how to request time off, some of those pieces, the day in, day out stuff that can be frustrating if it's not taken care of. We try to offer some professional development with each of the opportunities that we have throughout the year and try to make those relevant for our paras so that they find something that is useful to them that they can take back and use within the context of the students that they're working with. We also try to make sure that they all have nonviolent crisis intervention training. Again, so de-escalation strategies so that can help right away in working with students. So those are some of the things, I guess, that come to mind right away.
Yeah, and I would say a couple other big ones. With the pay, we've also increased our wages fairly significantly over the last few years. And then directly to benefits, which was the lowest ranking item in the exiting survey, we did expand access to the district's health insurance program with more affordable premiums for single premiums for our hourly employees. Whether or not that's going to be enough to change this trend, I'm not sure yet, but we continue to make efforts.
When you talk about that kind of, it's sort of like a mentor that you're connecting each para with and they're building, that sounded very like a person who is maybe more of a not necessarily emotional support or professional support kind of contact when they start.
From what I have, I guess, experienced and talking with a lot of our paras is that they become a very close connected group. So when they work with, within a setting together, I often find that they spend time together outside of work as well. They become pretty tight knit, and so I assume, and maybe incorrectly, but I assume that they have that emotional support there within the group that they work with. So that is where I think some of that emotional support will come from.
There's also some very close connections between the paras and the teachers that they spend the most time with.
Going back to the paras situation, are you aware or know what the statistics are on how many of them might decide they want to go back to school and become a teacher and then maybe possibly come back and, be a teacher or, something like that?
Yeah. I will send out, anytime like UW Eau Claire has a program where I believe it's an evening program. We have one of our paras right now that's currently enrolled in that. And so they can continue working as a para, and then they go to school when it's convenient for them. We've hired several of our paras into special ed teacher positions. I know of some fast track programs, especially for those that might have a bachelor's degree already, that they can get a certification. They don't have to get a second bachelor's degree, but they can get a certification and get them into the classroom. The other thing is a couple of universities will allow, or programs, it's not always universities, will allow our paras to continue working while they're student teaching. So they're very, specific about alternating those roles, which is a huge thing, because if I'm, a parent or even just a single individual that needs to support myself, it's very difficult to take that time off to student teach. So to be able to do that role reversal where the teacher becomes the para and the para becomes the lead and they complete their student teaching through that venue, we have been able to do that with a couple of different programs as well. So yeah, we're always encouraging, tapping people to say, hey, you would be a really good special education teacher if you ever thought about this type of program.
Yeah, and we don't have statistics based on that, but I can tell you over 20 years of administration, it's definitely way more now, the opportunity for promotion. Some of that's a product of the teacher shortage, and I think some of it's a product of the programming changing. Programming used to be much more rigid, and I think that's really improved. So there are many more opportunities for people to promote if that's what they would like to do.
I just had a quick question about the exit survey. Do exit leaving staff just get that as a link, or do you give them a physical survey as well?
They get a link.
Okay, I was just kind of wondering about like, if there was something in my mailbox for me to just sort of tick off while I'm having my coffee, it might be like,
That could potentially be, something that we could do. We try to, sometimes that turnaround is pretty quick. Again, sometimes we have people that just don't come back, and that, between that time and the time that we're shutting things down as far as technology is concerned, they may not get that link and be able to give us some feedback. In those cases, though, I will say that I do follow up with an email. One in particular that, that left the building, I emailed her, and as a follow-up, if they didn't leave their keys or they, didn't leave their device, that kind of thing. But then I also asked, is there anything that we could have done differently? And pay is listed frequently as one of the things that they will note. We are starting our paras next year at $18.40 an hour. And so that is very competitive within, I'd say, the big rivers and within this area for para pay.
One of my thoughts about the exit interview, especially if we're interested in meeting with people, I'm curious, if they don't open the link to the exit interview, is that the only time they're meeting in person? Like in the initial email sent out to them, is that an option, or is it just if they fill out the survey?
That's a good question. I think it does say it in the survey. I don't know that we send anything else out that says, if you would like to meet with your or if you'd like to meet with the Human Resources Department to talk about things. I do try to kind of gauge that, and I will ask people to come in, or, one in particular said I'd kind of like to wait until the end of the year. And so I try to gauge that a little bit, but that's a good suggestion, maybe just sending a general email or finding a different way to say, if you don't want to fill out the survey, I'm still interested in meeting with you in person.
Yeah, and then that actually is my second thing, is in the form, it's listed as, would you like to meet with HR? But it kind of seems like we want to meet with them, and nobody really wants to meet with HR. I mean that so respectfully, but like typically, stereotypically, that's not a great thing. So, maybe the wording of, can we schedule something or whatever.
To make it more on that, to make it seem that we would like to do that as opposed to leaving it up to the employee to let us know if they want to. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I can find a way to reword that. I appreciate that. And any other suggestions? I know exit surveys are not always fun, and but I think, like, not to bring Katie into the conversation, but with their phishing emails, everybody knows that if they click on the phishing email, that they get a little, a little fish, Swedish fish, and so maybe there's something there, like some sort of incentive that I can tie in as well. That would be helpful. So, any other questions there? Okay. All right. I'll just quickly wrap up with talking about substitutes. Again, pretty consistent numbers. It looks like we're up a little bit this year. We still do have some of our bonuses in place. Some of the bonuses that we started slightly prior to COVID and then added to as we needed more subs during COVID. And we've kept those in place because we've gotten some pretty good feedback on those. So after completing 30 teaching assignments, they receive substitutes. Substitute teachers will receive a $10 per day bonus, and then they receive a free activity pass and a free pass to the pool and field house. And then substitute teachers also have the option of receiving a free lunch when they are working. And again, that's another pretty popular incentive for our subs. So not a whole lot as compared to maybe previous years, not a whole lot of new substitutes that are coming in. Those numbers are pretty consistent and might be down And I'm also looking at food service and custodial. Those are very challenging positions to fill. And one of the things that we have done is increase that pay. And so starting July 1st, substitutes, custodial substitutes will be making $15 an hour. So again, trying to find ways to be fiscally conscious about what we're doing, but also enough to bring substitutes in and have people to cover our classrooms. So, any questions for me?
Thank you so much. And thanks for the 2 versions of the report with the visual. I appreciate that. All right. Next on the agenda, we have a review of strategic planning goals and major activities, the last of the year for 2023-2024.
Yeah, Rachel nailed it, and as you can see that almost all the items that were designated in the work plan for this year have been completed. There were a couple things that were put on hold or postponed or discontinued as the year went on. The new additions since the last time the board reviewed this late in the spring are listed in a blue font, but I'm very pleased with the progress made. I appreciate the work of all of our teachers, students, hourly employees, and administrators. And I guess with that, I'll open up for any questions or any comments that the board might have.
There's a lot here. This is a long document, and I just want to highlight that, especially for our newer folks, and I don't know, this is the first time you're seeing this document, or first time we're reviewing this at a board meeting, right, since the election, right? So we do this quarterly typically, and our next agenda item will be discussing what might go, what the board's priorities might be for the next year's work plan, but a lot of time gets put into making this plan at the beginning of the school year, and then on a quarterly basis, we just sort of review all of the progress toward completion.
If there aren't any questions, the next step would be for the board to begin discussing or providing any directive that you would like to give as we work towards building the 2024-2025 work plan. We do have a leadership team retreat in July. A portion of that retreat is spent identifying areas to recommend to the board for the work plan. So this is really just the beginning of the process. But if there are any items that the board members would like to share tonight, we're all ears.
I'll just, I don't have specific wording, but I think on a couple of the pillars, let's see, let me remember the pillar numbers for one. So pillar 3, our talented workforce, and then I think pillar 4, parent community partnerships. Those are things where I think, there's been a lot of great progress, and I'd like to continue that into the future as well. I think, we've seen a lot of things where, we discussed in the last meeting, some discussions about feedback on, from the QIC and so on, finding more ways to get kind of workforce input through the entire development of plans and policies. And I think it's a worthy thing to try to find ways to get more engagement from our talented workforce. There's so much experience there to draw on. I'm not quite sure how to word that, and I'm just something for the team to kind of mull over. And then also I think another thing that happened in the last meeting that really has stuck with me is the discussion about kind of student mental health and bullying and how that relates to parent relationships. And if there's ways or initiatives that could be emphasized in the work plan. I think in the last couple of years there's been this emphasis on the trusted point of contact. I apologize, I can't remember the term right now. For every student having a trusted adult that they can name and identify, and I think that's been to me that's been extremely impressive. And finding things along those lines which are not necessarily a major effort, but can have a huge impact on student student life and family responsiveness.
I just want to make sure I got this right, and I know you were giving us some flexibility in the wording, but essentially something about increasing input from the workforce, and then also further addressing bullying and relationships and student support.
Yeah, in particular in the student and family feedback portion of that, right? So when people feel that they've been, hurt or victimized or in a tough situation, that closing loop, not just with the discipline side, but also with the kind of support and, I don't know what's the right word, restorative justice type side. Yeah.
Got it. I also noted from the HR report about improving the exit survey process.
And then also from the HR report in Pillar 3, I would wonder if there's some things in there about improving para retention in broadly. I don't have an action item. That sounds hard, but something in there.
Following up, kind of what Abe's point is also something I was thinking of is, I think you mentioned kind of closing that loop. So for students who are struggling specifically in situations of bullying, how do we rebuild connection, I think, with other students? Especially, it sounds like we have good one-on-one support, like maybe in the moment or maybe initially. I think sometimes when we have reports about bullying, we talk about that we don't share the discipline or end result of the person who inflicted it with the person who's inflicted upon, and so we have to figure out how to support those students if that's not one aspect that they're getting it. I think we have there's maybe a self-care club, if I'm not mistaken, at the middle school. But I don't know if it's something like that, but that's just something I'm thinking about, is how do we support those students, especially if we're not supporting them in a way, if we're not able to do something that clearly could, letting them, that sort of follow-up, then I think we need something else to replace it. I think that's all I have right now.
I feel like that kind of gets it into, kind of both Pillar 4 and Pillar 2, right? Because it's about the student emotional wellness, but it's also about how the family is, family is moved into that too, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we could do some kind of follow-up on what the parent that came in a few meetings ago was talking about, how we have a link crew at the high school where upper grade level students support our incoming freshmen. If there's some kind of plan we can come up with for students supporting students, checking in with them in this capacity.
Like the idea of a kind of, rapid response almost to a bullying or harassment incident.
Completely different topic, and I'm curious what you think, Emily. One thing that I was wondering a lot about last year is we were talking with people in the community about the February referendum throughout the fall and winter. I felt like there's a lot of disconnect between the PTOs, PTAs at the different buildings, and also things like the Booster Club and the football club and the hockey. There's all these different parent organizations out there that seems like there's not a lot of linkage between them. And that's not necessarily the district's role. At the same time, I wonder if there's ways to, one thing I heard from several PTO leaders from different buildings was how they were all frustrated that they had to do their fundraiser the same week as the other PTO, and that they're all trying to sell the same coupons, and couldn't we just work together on this, in a more cohesive way across the district? I don't know, PTOs are technically a different organization, but if there's ways to do that kind of, that community side of relationship and resource building with involved parents in a way that actually ties ties across the community instead of being like, here's only Wacomico, here's only River Heights working alone versus maybe working a little more integrated. But I'm curious, Emily, what you think as former PTO?
Yeah, former PTO at River Heights, and I think the enormity of having to support, that's why I brought up the playground. I mean, we do as much fundraising as we can. The population of River Heights is different, right? It's probably our most diverse in the district, and so we do the best we can, but you know, we're raising like 20 grand a year, and that buys like us swing. You know what I mean? It's like, how are we supporting the children's growth and development at recess time, right? And it seems to come back to the PTOs. And we are a group of parents, we try and write grants, we try and tap into resources that we have, we try to be as creative as we can. And I think that, what you're suggesting is there a way that we can help bridge what's happening within PTO, PTAs across our district? Because I feel like we're just we're doing the best with what we can with the resources that we have, but we feel like we're having to support a larger, for school improvements, it's falling on our shoulders. And so that's why I brought up the maintenance of the building. I mean, River Heights is used for, they have early morning daycare, they have Boys and Girls Club, I did Girls on the Run there, Science Olympiad. I mean, there's so many community organizations, not just the students that utilize it, but it's a heavily used building, and so it needs some extra TLC.
So I'm not quite, so yeah, so I think on the top, let me find my pillar again. So the pillar was our community, families and community. Pillar 4, thank you. Parent and community partnerships. Seeing if there's ways we can leverage that energy across the district in more, let's say, have more collective ways, instead of being kind of every bull in an island, if there's a way to do that. I'm not quite sure, I have no recommendations and solution whatsoever, but I've observed that as a challenge that keeps being faced at different buildings whenever I talk to people involved in PTOs.
Yeah, I think even as much as just like information sharing, and beyond PTOs too, like with like booster clubs or, you know, the middle school parents groups and things like that, like knowing what kind of grants are out there, who else has applied for it, who's selling quick trip gas cards, and when, and how to navigate that so that everyone's not sort of inventing the wheel. I'll say another thing that came up that's sort of related to that in referendum conversations was, I heard from a number of community members who don't have a kid in the school, and wanted to know how to volunteer, and they didn't really know, like, you know, where to go. And as a parent, I always know where I can volunteer. Stacy's smiling back there. I have no shortage of information about that, and I could tell another community member, hey, you want to volunteer? I'll get you a background check form, and you can come to work, you know, you can help me with this fundraiser or whatever. But if there was a way, you know, in that idea of communication sharing, this feels related, right? If there was a way to make an easier entry point to community members who don't already have one.
Yeah, these are all good, thank you. We're gonna have a big work plan.
And I'm reluctant to say another one because I've said 3, but let me say
Well,
one.
now's the time.
You know, we've talked about this at length before, but and I think all of these are on that very similar theme of communication outreach and finding more thorough and consistent ways to get district news and messaging out to the community, whatever the topic. You know, this has come up in 100 different ways in different conversations, but, you know, we talk about the partnership, the schools as a partnership between the community, the taxpayers, the teachers, the parents, the students, and making sure the community actually knows what's going on in the schools. And if there's a way to, you know, whether it's newsletters or, I don't know what the options are necessarily, I'm not a journalist, right? But finding ways to reach out across the community to share messaging. I think there's been lots of progress in that direction, but also the media landscape is always changing, and also the population count is always changing, and so I think it'd be more, you know, dynamic and consistent about reaching out across the community at large. So that's yeah, again, on pillar 4, I feel like those partnerships are something that's very, very close to home right now, given our recent and future history.
I was also thinking about the communication, just following along with you today. Especially, I think, to me, it feels a little like maybe the physical media of like physical copies of like handing things out to people. Because I think we do, I think we have some online presence, but when I think about like options for people to find out the cool things we're doing, like, you know, maybe it would have been like a quarterly newspaper at some point, you know? But I think I don't know, it might be beneficial to have more physical copies of the things that we're doing, that we're sending out. In a way that, like, if we needed to use that, like, process for like a referendum or something else, it would like, fall in line instead of having to like recreate that. But basically what it said, more stutters.
You know, I agree with that, I don't know, I don't have any good ideas for how to increase that communication, but I think it should be a priority. And I don't want to change that discussion, but back up in pillar 3, I have a question about the first bullet point about input about accelerated movement plan being postponed. Refresh my memory on that.
Sure, that was one of the work plan items from this past year, and we decided that when we were going to look at the teacher compensation scale for 2024-2025, that we consider if there was a good way to provide an accelerated movement through that pay scale. And we developed actually a fairly robust plan, and we shared it at the building levels, we shared it at QIC, shared it with the board, and at that point it was determined that it actually would probably create more harm than good. So it was essentially postponed by the board and by it with recommendation from the administration and QIC group that it was not something we wanted to move forward with at this time.
And I'll just add, as someone who was at the QIC meetings where that was discussed, it was unanimous within that group that like Joe said, that people really felt like there's a lot of opportunity for that to go south.
Thanks.
Any final thoughts? Or again, you know, we don't have to write the words. Joe and the lead team are going to write the words for us to consider, but any final ideas for them to keep in mind as they head into their lead team retreat?
And there's still time, because like I said, we will work on it, we'll bring forward recommendations to the board to review. If not the last meeting in July, the first meeting in August, with the idea that we would have it approved by the board before the start of the school year.
There's no,
I want to make one last comment. So I just want to emphasize that the things I point out, since I've run so many, you know, this is like, I think these pillars, and like this is the work, you know, we're looking at work for the coming year to improve upon all the great things we're already doing. So it's not that these are like criticisms, they're saying we're doing great in all these areas, and the fact we're identifying these little chunks to focus on really is, I think, a testament to how well things are working overall. It's more, okay, now we're going to get an extra, you know, 1 or 2% of effort that will make a 10% more, you know, better outcome. So it's, we're looking for, you know, continuous improvement.
thank you for saying that. And on that note, what we should have said in the last agenda item was also a recognition of the amazing amount of things on the work plan that's just been completed and how much was done over this last year. So thank you for that, for everybody. Next agenda item. Board member update on community engagement sessions and referendum exploration. So we have some notes that, no surprise, Abe took very detailed notes of the items of the, what's the word, of the sessions that he was at. Besides what's in there, Dominique and I were also at the farmer's market past Saturday, and I didn't write notes, but Dominique didn't write notes, we can talk about it if we need to. And then we also have an updated calendar that was changed a little bit today, or yes, no, today. So folks maybe want to reopen that link just in case to make sure they see the opportunities before us. I guess questions or thoughts to start us off?
I have a kind of a concern. We're going to the brewery, and we're going to a farmer's market and all of that. And I was talking to some constituents, about what we're trying to do and the places we're going to be in case, they need people or they want to come talk themselves. And one of the things that came out was we're missing some population, they feel like. And one of the suggestions was maybe going to the senior center and hanging out. Working with the people that are, that
I think the senior center is a really great idea.
Brilliant.
I just want to say in defense of what we've done so far, I don't think anyone ever meant for this to be exhaustive. It's sort of just coming up with ideas, and folks to get back to us, right, and say, sure, you can be here. So, but I think the senior center is a great idea.
I think the whole slice of where can we go to people for this, as opposed to where can we be for people to come to us, is a really important thing to consider. So, yeah, we should add that. But it has been, and maybe it's just the summer timing of people being places, but there has been a lot of, that's a great idea, we'll get back to you. So finding permission to be places and then filling those slots in a timely manner and then letting people know that that's happening. Those three pieces, we're often getting two of them and missing one, and they don't really work unless we have all three. So it is definitely a pilot program mode, but I do think that's important to think about. I like it.
And
I'm not negating, that what's already been done. I think that's really good. But I just think if we really want to get an overall picture of the whole community, then we need to maybe branch out to some places. So I don't know what the committee thinks about that, or if they, if they want to contact the senior center and ask if there's some hours. I wouldn't mind, depending on my schedule, I wouldn't mind sitting down there.
And if folks have other ideas of places to go or events to be at, again, it's Amber, Michelle, and Emily. Right? Or, no, I'm sorry, just not Michelle. Amber, Angela, and Emily. To shoot those ideas too.
Something that was suggested by someone we talked to a week ago at the farmer's market was Brownsville Day, sorry, it's only one day today. and like even like Irvington has like a summer festival in August down at the Trailside Bar, right? So that's things where like this community, all comes together this one day of the year. And I see that, the NAP 4th of July thing is on there, and there's more listed at the bottom of the list. I think, I totally agree. I mean, I think that branching out as broadly as possible is really important. The farmers market in particular has been quite successful because it has such a big population. But I wouldn't be surprised if after maybe 3 of those, we start hitting the same people again, and it's worth, going somewhere else. So.
I think we can revisit the subcommittee to see if we've heard back from any of the other listed ones on the bottom for possible locations to go. And I love the senior center idea, so we can totally follow up on that.
I will make one quick note about the farmer's market. I did get there like about at 9 this past Saturday, and I know the market starts at 8, which is very early on a Saturday morning, but it's busy. It was packed when I got there at 9, and I do feel like there's a benefit to getting there early if folks are able to. Also, just say with regard to Downsville Day, the Downsville, speaking of PTOs, will be doing a fundraiser and probably could have, especially if someone wants to scoop snow cones while talking about the budget deficit, I think that could be arranged easily.
Abe, could you just give us kind of an overall like feeling in a sense? I was reading your comments, but just kind of an overall, was it well received?
Well, yeah, I'm actually curious where Michelle thinks
And
this was
Michelle,
there,
okay.
both times I was there, but, I think none of us quite knew what to expect, but I was incredibly impressed by the depth of some people said, hey, this is great, I'm glad you're here, and had maybe a 2-minute conversation. Some people talk for 10, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, and really talk through like, here's what I think happened and why it happened, and going into, lots of detail, and trying to get it down, so I had something to show for that long conversation. And yeah, I was incredibly impressed by the thoughtfulness and the questions, and these concerns I think that we all kind of had, this nervousness, are people just going to kind of complain in a vague way. That was not the case. People seemed very first of all, appreciative that we were out there. It was a most consistent message, and had a whole variety of thoughts and experiences to share, which I think was fantastic.
I came away with feeling that it was very worthwhile, and I was a bit skeptical in the beginning. So we had a wonderful location too at the farmer's market, so people had to go right past us, and I think the signage and the tablecloth made a huge difference because it really made us recognizable. People just were stopping left and right, and I learned a lot from being there. The first one as well, but because of the how we were there 8 to 10, right? We were right there right from the early on at the farmer's market, and there were so many people there, and we got to talk to just so many different people and things that I hadn't heard at all. I mean, there are things we've heard a lot, but some of the notes that Abe took were things I had not heard at all. So I came away just really kind of excited, like I had learned so much more about what our community was thinking than I knew before. So it was a great experience. I'm kind of excited to keep doing it. But I do think the key to this is going to where the people already are, not trying to get them to come to us. And the more we can think outside the box to be able to do that, the better. Or the better information we'll to gather from our community members. I love the idea that Amy brought up.
I think
It
that
really wasn't my idea. I'll take credit. I brought it to you guys.
and I think there's a distinct difference in the first kind of pilot at Menomonie versus at the farmers market. At Menomonie, a few people came because they knew we were going to be there, so it was posted. At the farmer's market, we were right at the end of the row as people turn around, and they were like buying strawberries and carrots. And they're like, what's the school doing here? Or why are you all here? Right? And so, well, we're out here trying to hear people want to talk about it. And I think because they were there as part of their daily routine, they were, I think, in some ways like less guarded and more honest about more willing to have a conversation, because it's the sort of place you just bump into people and have conversations, and that was definitely an effect. And we had, I think, probably a dozen conversations over 2 hours that just were on all different topics. But people were aware that the school was facing challenges. They were, whatever their thoughts were about their referendum that happened in February, they were concerned about the future, and they had their own personal experiences to bring to that conversation. So I think that's a win.
I personally think too, just having accessibility to the school board members is huge, because I feel like sometimes people might feel we're standoffish, like, oh, they're on the school board,
right? And I wanted it to be like, no, we're here for the community, right? This is what we're part of. And so I'm really glad that the initial feedback has been positive.
It was nice for me as a new board member to be with someone that is a returning board member that had that experience. I took some comfort in that, and questions that you could answer that I couldn't, and questions that I could bring up that he wouldn't have thought of. So we stopped after and collaborated kind of with each other, debriefed, and that was one of the big ideas that we walked away with as well.
I would just say briefly, I think our experience this past Saturday at the market was pretty similar to what you've all described.
Something, well, ditto to everything you guys said. I really appreciate this opportunity. It was really cool. Something that struck me was that what was nice about the farmers market is that there was a wide variety of people, like based on where they lived. So like there were like several people who had kids in the district, some whose kids were about to be school age. I saw a friend who lives in Rice Lake who was there, you know, like, so we have literally just, you know, people from all over. So it's nice to hear people's thoughts who are like directly here, but also people who don't live here, but have other experiences with education or in their district. So that was kind of an unexpected, nice perspective to that.
My question is, where's all the stuff that we need for Wednesday?
In the back of my car.
Okay, so we can exchange that. Thanks.
Yep.
I also think, I forgot. Sorry. I mean, this is a little bit of a heavy lift for summer schedule, right? Like, this is a lot, and we all know this is a busy time of year. But it's important to be out there right now. But if this serves to set us up with a really nice template to keep doing this once a month indefinitely, I think this is a really cool way to make the point of being out there and doing the work that happens outside of the boardroom and outside of the, you know, we all know what we do, lots of reading, so much budgets and those things, but being out there to make people respect you when you do the work, and they're all doing the work. It's nice to be meeting the community.
It's a great idea. Oh, I know Elk Mound does something a little similar. They don't actually go out, but what they do is before their school board meeting, let's say their school board meeting starts at 6, I don't know what time it really starts, but at 5 o'clock they'll have 2 board members and they do it on a rotation basis for them to come bring concerns. Or, you know, I mean, ideas that maybe that things are going great.
Probably less than that.
Yeah.
So hopefully for those of you who have not yet signed up, that's a fairly encouraging conversation, and you can find the time on the schedule, on the emailing schedule to sign up. As Amber just said, everyone's been very busy, especially as you head for July. But if there's a day or two, you know, I'm gonna try to get there this Saturday if I can get approval from my family to be away on Saturday afternoon. But I think there's gonna be, yeah, and also like the schedule can change, right? The committee's probably figuring out what makes most sense. Maybe some of the things that are on there are less worthwhile. You can add other things to it based on workload. But if we can get, you know, 1 or 2 a week, I think that's really great.
I'm sorry, I just looked at the new calendar that was unloaded, but I just want to confirm, the NAP July celebration is confirmed, like, that we can go to?
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, we thought it was going to be on July 6th, and it is not. It is on June 29th, which changes. Emily and I were going to be there, and we can't.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Oh, I can't even know otherwise it's.
All right. Oh,
Is the procedure still to email Jenny to sign up?
Is that working okay for you? Okay. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for that effort. And also thank you to our committee members for making this calendar and doing all this work. Making millions of phone calls, I assume. Moving on. Next on the agenda is a review of the extracurricular staff contract requests. This is just for our information. Are there any questions or discussion about the extracurricular requests?
Rachel, I just want to point out that with Matt Riley being appointed the new activities director, we're in the process of searching for a new head boys basketball coach. And then also, we're having difficulty finding a girls swimming coach for the fall. And that season starts in August, so if anybody knows of someone interested in coaching the girls swimming team, please have them reach out to the high school.
All right, if there's no more discussion on that. Items related to next meeting dates, board committees, and reports. New board. Well, we have all the community listening sessions on here. We have our July regular board meeting on July 8th and our special board meeting July 22nd. August, just as a reminder, we have our regular board meeting on August 12th and our annual meeting will be at the high school on August 26th at 6 p.m. But there's a lot more information on there for folks to take a look at. And I would like to suggest we take a 5-minute recess before we move into closed session. Does that work? Awesome. Thank you, everybody.